get your thoughts and pick your brain on some of the negatives of this deal. And I kind of want to break it down to three categories because with all negatives, there's always ways to improve them, right? So I kind of want to break it down into, I actually have four categories here. So I can live with this problem, but it's a little annoying. It's not terrible, but if it was fixed, it would greatly improve the product. It has to be fixed next year, and we won't know until the end of this 10 years is up. And that's kind of the four general categories here. So, do you have anything that jumps into any of those right now as a negative that pops in there?
Yeah, well, I'm trying to think of what category this fits in, but the general thing that people always crap on with the Apple TV thing is, it's on this one streaming service, and no one's going to pay for that. No one wants to, just get something for MLS. And I do think that MLS is the test dummy for this season pass on Apple TV, and I think one thing that will greatly benefit the season pass is when Apple acquires like the Premier League or something else, like another big league. I think if they were able to add another league next to their realm, it'll make more people buy into getting the MLS season pass and stuff like that. The more Apple TV has to offer, the more people will go to the season pass, even if it's not just the season pass. Because if you have Apple TV, then the season pass is cheaper already. So things like that. So I'm trying to think of what category that fits in, but that's what first comes to mind, where it's like a way that like will naturally improve it. And maybe it like doesn't need to be fixed yet, and it's not necessarily a problem. It's just one of the things that I hear people complain about the most is who wants to just buy spend $99 for just MLS matches.
Mhm.
But what I will say, and I don't want to come off too like privileged or anything, when you break down how much the season pass actually is, it's not that crazy of an amount.
Mhm.
I would argue that you're paying for streaming services, I guarantee, that are more expensive than that. First of all,
Yeah.
but I think that's the big thing. No, everyone's like, oh, I don't want to pay $99 for MLS this year. You
Mhm.
break that down. That's if you just watch your club, that's like $3 a match for just your club.
Yep.
Which for $12 a month, I guess, or however you want to break it down.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's that terrible. Sorry if that didn't
No.
answer any of
No,
your
no,
categories.
that was perfect because it's actually one of the things I have there too. But it was funny because I was at the gym one morning and I was scrolling through social media and pops up the Premier League's looking to go to a paywall streaming service. And my only thought was like, oh yeah, like I guarantee you that everybody who is screaming about $99 for MLS is going to be just equally as livid when Premier League's charging 200. Right? They're
Yeah,
gonna they're gonna be losing their mind. Of course they
and
won't because it's a Premier League and it's got this aura around it. It's like, oh, you can pay whatever you want for it. It's a Premier League, right?
and that's what people have been telling me in my comments, actually, where other leagues they pay way more for their subscription,
Hmm.
for whatever website they're streaming their matches on. So that's the thing as well. But I do think Apple adding more leagues, and I know they're going to bid for the Premier League. Like
Oh
we
yeah,
just know, like this isn't an inside source type thing. Like we just know they're going to go for it.
yeah,
That's only going to help the season pass more. We know that Apple is using MLS as their test dummy, and I think it's been a success in a lot of ways. People
mhm.
like to be like, oh, MLS isn't releasing their numbers or anything. They don't really care. I don't think that really matters.
No,
And I'm sure they're not terrible numbers, but at the end of the day, I don't think it matters. It's more creating a quality product that is great for the fans and something they're proud of right now. Because Apple's making, or MLS is making, a lot of money in a ton of different ways. They're not just relying on this Apple deal.
yeah, no, 100%. Like I said, for me, this falls in the category of not terrible, but if you fixed it, you improve the product, right? And
Yeah.
really, this one is kind of overarching for the casual non-MLS fan, right? Because like you mentioned, you just mentioned the whole thing, like anybody who is on the social media, you know, echo chamber for lack of a better term is like, oh yeah, MLS behind a paywall, nobody's going to watch to pay that league. Like, that's not happening. I'm never going to do that, right? Literally almost half the games every week are free to watch as long as
Mhm.
you have the app on your TV or on your phone, right? Nobody knows about it. It's not advertised well. I need to try and tell people all the time. They put the one post out on MLS, MLS's socials, but that's it. Like you couldn't tell me which ones are free every year because I don't see advertisements for it. I don't see things that pop out. But if I get lucky and I scroll past it on my Instagram feed, it's like, okay, great. Now I know which games my friends can watch if they don't have the season pass. But the fans of the league know what this product is and they know how good it can be. But how do you convince a casual fan who doesn't love MLS or doesn't love soccer to give it a watch and say, okay, yeah, this is worth my money. You have to get the idea out there more. So it's not terrible because, like you said, they're still getting viewers and money, and it's not a problem. But if you want to improve the product and improve the overall kind of shell around what you're doing, you have to get more of the casuals involved and say, oh, you know what, this actually is pretty good.
Definitely. And I think that comes from just a content perspective. And the more promotion they do for the season pass, or just the more content they put out outside of the season pass, I think is a very beneficial. I know YouTube is technically a competitor of Apple in a way, but I think the more YouTube content they put out, the better. To promoting specifically, and then also the more stuff you see on Instagram and everything. It doesn't have to be a direct call to action for the season pass, but it just gets people interested into the players and stuff. It should have a trickle down effect to that. I think I'll put it in a can live with it, but slightly annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I think the broadcasters in general do a very great job. They're great broadcasters, but I'd be lying if I said, I didn't miss Joe Tutino covering Galaxy matches. And I know you have the radio option and stuff, but I do kind of miss, the beat play-by-play guys, the guys who stick to their one club. It's cool to have a rotation. I like certain duos way more than I like others. But I'm sure, as a Red Bull fan, you miss your Cangelosi every week and stuff like that. I think that's kind of a struggle. It's something that's annoying, but I guess I could live without it because I don't see that changing. I don't think they're going to revert back to what it was before the season pass, but that's something I miss for sure. So I guess that's going to be my can live with it, but slightly annoying thing.
Are you reading my screen? Do you have my notes there? Because not only did you take the exact topic I was talking about in the exact same category, but you name dropped Steve Cangelosi, which is crazy sicko behavior, which I love. But yeah, man, that was exactly it for me. It's the rotation of the announcers, right? So what this all came to me because they made this comment like, oh yeah, all of the a good amount of the announcers are start announcing from just a central location on a screen, right?
Yeah.
If that's the case, then when the Red Bulls travel to LA, let Steve Cangelosi sit in a room and announce a Red Bull game, right? If you're not going to make him travel anyway, why bother? Right, keep the group together and let Steve go back to the Red Bull games because him and Shep Messing were elite. They were
Yeah.
fantastic. I actually I didn't get a chance to meet them, but they were in the same room as me at the 2018 Shield party, and at that time I was still kind of new in the being a really big fan of the team. So I was like, they don't want to talk to a random guy like me, so I just kind of let them go on their own way. But they were household names to Red Bull fans. I mean, it was hosted by Seeing Red, Mark Fishkin, and the crew, and I mean everybody going up to them, Steve, Shep, how you doing? Like just talking to them because they were such a big part of the culture of the team about who the team was, right? And now it's like, okay, great, I can't even think of another one right now. Danny Higginbotham with Steve Cangelosi, right? Like just because I know they work together a lot. It's not bad. You're right. It's I can live with it because they work really well together. There are other partners that are like you get name mispronunciations, you get the lack of understanding of the team culture and kind of like what they've been doing the last couple of months. It just feels general and like they trying to do what NFL did, and I don't think it works very well personally, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Or no, I just want to add, like when you have a guy that sticks with his one club, you get these stories that that you just don't get from a duo that's placed in every week. You get a guy who's around the club 24/7, who's been there for years and has these crazy stories about the time that, oh, this guy was a trialist for this team. I remember when he did this and he liked the color purple or whatever. You don't get those types of like gold nuggets of information that you get from these legendary broadcasts. And same the way you feel about Steve Cangelosi is the same we feel about Joe Tutino at the Galaxy. He's like our mascot, our secondary mascot behind Cosmo. And he is a club legend. He's still around at the club and he does the radio stuff, but it's just not the same. And Galaxy fans will complain on and on about certain broadcasters' bias against the Galaxy or the feeling of bias against the Galaxy, especially a certain Sunday Night Soccer analyst. But that's aside the point. But we just want to feel we like. Also, Joe Tutino is a total homer. We love that.
Yeah.
We don't care. We want him to be biased towards us. We want him to be excited when the Galaxy score. And obviously less excited when LAFC scores. Like that's just how we want it.
Yeah, it almost feels like you're talking to another fan, right? It almost feels like you're talking
Yeah.
to somebody who supports the team just as much as you do. It's like, without turning around and like saying, I can't believe that just happened. Being like, oh man, that stings that they scored. And honestly, Steve Cangelosi did a really good job of being as neutral as he could. But it was great when he would lose his mind at last minute goals.
Oh yeah.
Thierry Henry goals. Like those were the ones that got me hooked when Thierry Henry would score and he would go off on his thing. I'm like, this is elite. And I know DC United, and I will always forget this guy's name, and I feel terrible about it. But it's in the net guy, the guy who just
Yeah.
screams, "It's
Oh
in the
crap.
net." I
Dave
can't remember his
Johnson,
name.
was that his name?
Yes, 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 yes.
Dave
I
Johnson.
will.
Yeah.
I forget his name 100 times out of 100, and I feel terrible about it. But yes, but again, people who like he was a staple from '96 all the way back at the beginning. Like it just stuff like that. Like is you don't want to see moved on for the benefit of making it more NFL-y, you know?
Yeah.
What else you got? You got anything else you can think of?
Let me
Because I've got
see.
I've got two more, but I want to give you a chance here because I got one that I want to talk about at the very end.
All right. I got a must be fix for next year.
Okay.
In general, I find the score bug a little boring
Okay.
and a little
Cool.
too clean. I think I'd like to add a little more, even if it becomes even if it regresses in its style. They're trying to be very modern with it. I
Mhm.
want to see like the little club logo emblems on it or something. Also, keep it a little tighter. You know how it's very long. I'd rather
Yep.
it be like a more of a box rather than like one long line. That's selfishly for editing purposes because when I edit videos, I have to edit out the score bug.
Yep.
But I'd like I'd like a bit of a different one. I think it's too boring, and I know Apple is very clean in how they do their things, but I don't know. For the matches, I'd love to have more of like an old school score bug.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's kind of very similar to what I was doing for my must be fixed next year. And really, it's the little things, right? There are things that you can fix in an instant without
Yeah,
having to spend $1 million to do it, right? And really, it's focus and it's the details, right? If you're putting up a graphic about NYCFC, and granted, mess them up all you want, do not care, won't hurt me a ton. But if you put up an NYCFC graphic and it's got a hot pink background with a St. Louis logo on it, unacceptable, right? We're going into year 4 here or year 3.
yeah,
We'll be in year 4 next year. It's unacceptable for the fact that we are still putting up graphics with the wrong color, the wrong logo, and sometimes the wrong people. Like that tells me that Apple TV makes it look like you're just like, I don't care. This is just like we talked about. It's just our test bug. We can make a bunch of mistakes. Nobody's gonna care, right? It almost feels like they were like, oh, I wonder if we can code AI to make this happen, right? Like that's what it feels like. And then if that image, which it always will get out to the social medias full of the anti-MLS crowd, it automatically gives them fuel to the fire to be like, ha ha ha, Burger League, like, oh, nobody cares about
yeah,
you. We told you, blah 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 blah. Right? It's just the little things that we brought you in to help raise us. And now you are making mistakes that are lowering us. And that stuff is and I mentioned the audio video stuff too. That is a little bit less in your control, right? You have wires that go bad or whatever. Like that I can understand to a degree. But the easy stuff, like making sure your graphics are correct, it's got to be
Mhm.
fixed by next year. If you can't go into year 4 of 10 looking like you are fifth fiddle in this Apple TV deal that's got one league that they care about right now. It's just not good.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I'm trying to think of more not terrible, but should be fixed to improve the product. I guess that's another one.
Hmm
What else do you have? I'm sure if
The,
you say your next one, I'll more will come into my head.
yeah, man. Well, this is kind of the last one that I've got because I wanted to kind of hit this last big one. So if you do have others that pop up, we could talk about it. But this is kind of the big one for me because it involves a little bit more opinion analysis, right? So this relates to the casual fan, right? Because all the time you heard when this thing was going into practice, right? Going behind the paywall, people were saying that MLS is going to shut itself off from capturing the casual fan who's going to be watching regular TV, scroll past MLS, and get hooked, right? We have lost out on tons of people that way is the narrative. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I have a very strong opinion on this, but I've never really picked anybody else's brain on it.
Can I be honest? I don't share this opinion very much. I
Okay.
think that mindset is a bit overrated. The only reason why is because of the shift, the natural shift in culture and media. I mean, how many people do you really know I still have cable. It means my parents' cable. How many
Right.
people do you know that still have cable and still like are hardcore cable people? They watch everything on cable. They set their DVR because they're gonna miss their show. How many people do you still know that do that?
I turned it down. They offered it to me. I said no, thank you. When I moved into my new apartment, I was like, absolutely not. I'm not paying an extra $90 a month for stuff I'm not going to use.
And that's another point.
Yeah.
$90 a month for that when it's $99 for the whole year for MLS. You
Yep.
know, if you're someone who's watching cable solely for sports, there's probably cheaper alternatives out there now for you just streaming out of your laptop or get, a Roku TV that has, the apps that you could. That's what I used in college. The best thing ever
Oh
with all the
yeah.
apps, Apple TV app on there. Perfect. So that's what my mindset is on the whole cable debacle, because I think that's a big issue that people like to share um because they say, oh, we can't watch it on cable, how are we going to find the matches? I just think the way media works these days is just so different. First of all, people aren't watching full matches anyways these days, but also, you get your highlights from your phone now. You watch your highlights from your laptop. A lot of people watch all their streaming from their laptop. They don't even have a big screen TV to watch on. That's just the way things are shifting. So I think that mindset is very overrated, where MLS is losing out solely because of that. Because I really don't think that's the biggest factor. I just think in general the biggest push the league needs is through social media and on places like YouTube to help guide people, not necessarily through cable. And to be honest, the very few matches we get on cable are much lower quality broadcasts than watching it on Apple TV, like the Fox Sports ones. If that match is on Fox Sports or Apple TV, if they're on the same time, I'm still watching the Apple TV version no matter what. So it's because of the quality, even if it's more convenient to watch it on FS1. That's just it's a higher quality broadcast.
Which is my favorite when people are like, "Oh my God, USL outdrove MLS Cup on linear cable." It's like, of course it did, because
No one watched it on.
nobody watched it on cable, right? And that's not a knock on USL. I don't watch enough of it as I should, but I do enjoy when I can get my eyes on it. And but it's like, of course it is, right? It always is going to be that way because we have a very nice streaming service, right? But listen, I think it's fair to say that MLS took a risk with this, right? People who
Yes.
are like, oh, they took a big step forward. They did because they needed to differentiate themselves from what was going on, and it's absolutely a risk. But I've said this once and I've said it again, and I will. This is a hill I will die on, no doubt. The number of people who on a Saturday afternoon in the middle of college football season, NFL season, NBA season, MLB or NHL season, who has scrolled past an MLS game on a channel searching, the guide button on your TV and was like, yeah, I'm going to watch that because I have nothing else that I want to watch today. And then got so hooked that they became a lifelong fan, a season ticket holder. They tattooed their club on their arm. You may be able to count that on one hand.
Oh,
I
I
don't, I
agree.
don't, I, yeah, I don't think that's a real thing that we are missing out on. Now, can you tell me that you lost a decent amount of fans because they didn't want to pay for another streaming service? Absolutely. And I'll hear that all day long. But the fact that we're missing out on millions of eyes because we went streaming instead of cable is absurd to me.
But I also think just because people aren't subscribed to the Apple Season Pass, they're not following MLS still. Because like I mentioned, how many people these days, I mean, especially my generation and younger, actually watch a full 90-minute match? They love the 7-minute highlights of each team. They'll watch on TikTok highlights and stuff
Mhm.
like that. So, people become hardcore fans without even watching 90 minutes anymore. So that's also another thing. But I do think I will miss, although they're very few, and I don't think they're the people have the stories as drastic as you described it. Just people who are randomly scrolling on TV and they find an MLS match like, oh, this is cool. But like you mentioned, MLS competes with a lot of different things to scroll through and hit on. Sometimes if I would even pick, I mean, I would definitely pick, a certain March Madness match over DC Chicago, even if I miss a bicycle kick.
Right.
I want to watch Duke and March Madness, even
Yeah.
as an MLS sicko myself. Like
Well, and that's the thing. It's like people look around. It's like look at the third division Sunderland, right? Like they pack out 40,000. Of course they do, because what else are you doing in Sunderland? What else are you watching, right? You're not. And this is the other thing too, is like, oh, everybody in America gets up to watch Premier League games. It's like, yeah, MLS kicks off at 1 a.m. in England. right?
Yeah.
Like, of course, it's a different sort of mindset. Like, people will get up because then their day has started. People aren't going
Mhm.
to stay up for something like that, right? I don't. I'll be honest. I don't stay up for a lot of Western Conference games that go super late because I'm busy. I got other things to do, right? And I will get up early to watch things though, which is a completely different story. But this idea that it's just like we are missing everybody. No, we're not. Right.
No.
And I am still a full match guy. I will watch every 90-minute Red Bull match of all, and I will turn on MLS 360 after. But
Mhm.
even on the Sunday soccer, I'll just keep it on in the background. But
Yeah.
you're right. I think that this idea of people who are just like I'm gonna lock in and find a random MLS game on a Sunday night or a Sunday evening, especially when you've got other sports or realistically other TV, right? If we're talking, you've got two sets of fans. You've got the soccer fans who don't like MLS, or you've got the non-soccer fans in general who you are trying to capture.
Mhm.
Non-soccer fans in general at Saturday on 7 p.m. probably turning on Jeopardy because that's
Yeah.
like what my dad watches Jeopardy all the time. It's like I had to drag him to watch soccer and now he's into it. But most people are not going to wake up and be like, you know what I want to watch today instead of my sitcom or my Netflix binging show or whatever, I'm going to watch an MLS game. It doesn't happen that way. But to make this all full circle, you said it best. The best way to get them involved is to go. Get in the
Mhm.
stadium, bring your friends and go. And that is I remember that was my first like that's how I got my dad to be really hooked into it. I took him to his first game, and he was like, I used to have to tell him like, Red Bull playing in 2013. He's like, who's that number 14 guy? He's pretty good. I'm like, yeah, Dad, that's Thierry Henry. Like, kind of legit, right? Now he's texting me about the game when I'm like coaching or driving back from coach. He's like, did you see Danny Edelman how he recovered and made that sliding tackle from? I'm like, who are you? Right. But that's how it starts. You have to get them into the thing. So, I take my buddy to when I was in Lexington, Kentucky, I took him up to Cincinnati for Red Bull Cincinnati. He's a Venezuelan guy, so like Cáceres and Wiki Carmona and all these guys. But then he watches, like, you know what? This was Cincinnati was bad. We had Tom Barlow playing striker. Like, it was a terrible game, right? And love Tom Barlow. Don't get me wrong. But he comes back
Right.
and says, listen, it was fun. Like the atmosphere was good. And then he took two of my friends who after I had left, and they're like, oh yeah, that was a really good time. Like we had a great time. And now it's just getting them to do it again and again and again. And eventually you get them. And that's what it's all about. But it's not going to be random after yard work on a Sunday, sitting up on your couch, flipping through the channels. No, I'm not. I'm going to watch MLS now. That's not how that's going to work.
No, I mean, for me, that's why I'm such a big advocate for it, because that's what drew me into the league by just going to a match. I grew up in a basketball watching, baseball playing background. I didn't have soccer. I didn't grow up playing soccer at all, and it really took me going to my first Galaxy match, seeing a supporter section for the first time was what really drew me, because I was like, what is this? I'm used to just eating a hot dog at a Dodger game, sitting back, kind of paying attention and not, and then you go into this big atmosphere and you see the goals and everything. I mean, it truly is a special thing. And I think anyone who, whether you watch sports or not, it's pretty easy to get into, supporting an MLS club or a soccer club just by showing up. There's something for everyone there. There's people in the supporter sections that don't even care about the match. They just love getting drunk and chanting, like
Yes.
it's a different sport. It's a different vibe. And then these people, they still rock the jerseys and they're like hardcore, even though they don't give a crap about what's happening on the field. But those are sometimes the best fans, because when we're down bad, they're still the ones going the hardest.
Yep.
Uh,
100%.
so that's just like the beauty of the game, and it really just takes experiencing it in person to fall in love with it. And that's why I'm a big advocate of going to matches, and also if you're not in an MLS market, so find whatever club is closest to you, whether it's Division 1 or Division 4, who cares. There's something for everyone somewhere.
100%. That's the other thing too is like like I said, I'm in South Carolina. I'm 2 hours from Atlanta. I'll be there on Saturday when Red Bull go. I'm 2 hours from Charlotte. I go there all the time when Red Bull play, and I'll be at Atlanta for Chelsea Leon. I'll be in Charlotte for Bayern Benfica. Like I'm going to a bunch of games, but an hour down the road, I've got SC United Banthams, which is a USL2 summer league team. So I watch all the Division 1 kids play in the summer, right? We've got down the road, we got Charleston Battery, right? We've got those
Mm-hmm.
guys right down the road. We've got all these different, and it's just like, go, just go watch it because
Mm-hmm.
you've got your supporter sections, you've got them all over the place, and it doesn't have to be, the MLS level. It can be anywhere because you have that passion there, and that's how it grows. That's what you need to do.